What happens when a dream vacation, broadcast to thousands of followers as the ultimate romantic getaway, devolves into an international nightmare in the span of just a few days? For 31-year-old Ashlee Robinson, known to her massive online following as Ashlee Jenae, the first week of April was supposed to be the pinnacle of her life. She was a vibrant, successful lifestyle influencer based out of Miami and New Jersey. Her online presence was a carefully curated blend of fashion, travel, and high-end aesthetics. She had built a community of over 100,000 followers who tuned in daily to watch her navigate life with a radiant smile and an undeniable entrepreneurial drive. To her family, she was a beloved daughter and sister, a bright light whose ambition was matched only by her warmth. She was entering her 30s with the world at her feet, and to celebrate her 31st birthday, she and her fiancé, 45-year-old Joe McCann, planned a trip that most people only ever see in magazines. They flew to Tanzania, specifically to the breathtaking archipelago of Zanzibar. They checked into the Zanzibar, an ultra-luxury resort where private villas can cost upwards of $1,000 a night. It is the kind of place designed for ultimate privacy and exclusivity, nestled against pristine beaches and lush tropical landscapes. The early days of the trip played out exactly like a fairy tale. The internet watched as the couple visited the Serval Wildlife Sanctuary. Ashlee posted breathtaking videos of herself in a stunning green dress, hand-feeding a giraffe from a high balcony, radiating absolute joy. On April 3rd, surrounded by the incredible African landscape, Joe McCann got down on one knee and proposed. Ashlee said yes. 2 days later, on April 5th, she celebrated her 31st birthday. The photos from that day show a woman celebrating love, life, and her future. If you were to look solely at her digital footprint during those first few days in April, you would see a woman who had won the lottery of life. But in the world of true crime, we know that social media is merely a highlight reel. It is a highly filtered lens that crops out the reality happening just outside the frame, what Ashlee's followers didn't see. And what her family would only tragically learn later was that the fairy tale was fracturing. Behind the closed doors of their luxury villa, the romantic birthday and engagement trip was allegedly plagued by intense, escalating arguments. The tension was building, completely isolated from the outside world, setting the stage for a timeline of events that has left international authorities, digital investigators, and a grieving family searching for the truth. To understand the sheer confusion and the glaring red flags surrounding Ashlee Jenae's death, we have to meticulously break down the events of April 8th. This is the day the idyllic facade officially collapsed, and it is the exact point where the timeline begins to raise terrifying questions. According to emerging reports and alleged leaks from hotel staff at the Zanzibar, the arguments between Ashlee and Joe did not stay confined to quiet, private disagreements. By the evening of April 8th, the tension had reached a boiling point. The dispute reportedly escalated to a level where hotel management felt compelled to intervene. In a luxury resort of this caliber, staff are trained to remain invisible and accommodate guests with utmost discretion. For management to step in and physically separate a newly engaged couple, the situation had to have been highly disruptive and deeply concerning. The intervention resulted in a critical logistical change that is now the centerpiece of this entire investigation. The hotel made the decision to separate Ashlee and Joe for the night. Ashlee remained in their original accommodation, while Joe was relocated to a completely different room, reportedly room 65. This detail is absolutely vital. The Zanzibar is not a standard hotel with long, indoor hallways where rooms are just a few doors down. It is a sprawling compound of private, standalone villas connected by outdoor pathways through tropical gardens. Room 65 was reportedly an 8 to 10 minute walk away from Ashlee's villa. By the late hours of April 8th, Ashlee Jenae was alone. She was in a foreign country, thousands of miles away from her family in the United States, isolated in a private villa after a severe altercation with the man she had just agreed to marry. What happened in the hours following that separation is the black hole of this case. There is a staggering gap in the public timeline between the moment Joe McCann was escorted to his new room and the moment Ashlee was found the next morning. However, one chilling detail has allegedly leaked from the resort staff, providing a fleeting glimpse into her final known moments. According to these unverified reports, shortly before the tragedy unfolded, Ashlee requested a phone charger from the hotel staff. In forensic victimology, behavioral details like this are heavily analyzed. A person who is in immediate distress or someone who is allegedly contemplating ending their own life rarely concerns themselves with the battery life of their electronic devices. Asking for a phone charger suggests an intention to stay connected, to reach out, to wake up the next morning and use that phone. It is a mundane, forward-looking action that severely contradicts the official narrative that local authorities would soon try to push, but after that charger was delivered, silence fell over the villa, and the next morning, that silence would be broken by a horrific discovery. The morning of April 9th did not bring resolution or peace to the Zanzibar resort. Instead, it brought a scene of unimaginable tragedy that would immediately spark international outrage and a desperate quest for answers, while the exact time of discovery remains a heavily guarded detail in the ongoing investigation. We know that hotel staff entered Ashlee's villa that morning. What they found inside shattered the tranquility of the resort and ended the life of a bright, beloved young woman. Early reports circulating in the media, fueled by initial statements from local authorities, claimed Ashlee was found inside a closet or a wardrobe. However, as the family pushes for transparency and independent investigations begin to pierce the veil of the initial response, the narrative has shifted to indicate she was found unresponsive in the villa, reportedly hanging from a clothesline or door fixture, with a belt around her neck. When a tourist dies under unnatural circumstances in a foreign country, the immediate response of local law enforcement is absolutely critical. In cases involving high-end tourism destinations, there is often an immense and unspoken institutional pressure to resolve the situation quickly and quietly. Tourism is the lifeblood of Zanzibar's economy. Lengthy, highly publicized homicide investigations at elite resorts are terrible for business, perhaps driven by this pressure, or perhaps due to a catastrophic rush to judgment. The local Zanzibar authorities reportedly moved with terrifying speed to label the scene a suicide, without waiting for a comprehensive forensic autopsy, without thoroughly analyzing the timeline of the previous night's altercation, and without immediately securing the scene as a potential homicide. The narrative of a self-inflicted death was rapidly established, but for anyone looking objectively at the physical reality of the scene, the questions were immediate and deafening. How does a physically fit, 31-year-old woman successfully hang herself with a belt from a standard door fixture or clothesline? The biomechanics of such an act require specific conditions that are incredibly difficult to achieve in a standard hotel room layout. Furthermore, she had been separated from her fiancé just hours prior due to a severe argument. In any standard criminal investigation in the United States, the person who was last seen arguing with the deceased, especially a romantic partner, is immediately treated as a person of interest until forensics definitively prove otherwise. The scene is locked down. Every inch is swabbed for touch, DNA. The partner's physical person is photographed for defensive scratches or bruising. But in Zanzibar, the initial protocol seemed heavily skewed toward an open and shut case of a tragic, isolated suicide. But while the local police were allegedly drafting their preliminary conclusions, a far more sinister timeline was playing out across the globe. Back in the United States, Ashlee's family was completely unaware that their daughter was dead, and the man who held that devastating information was making choices that would cast a permanent shadow of suspicion over his every move. In any sudden, tragic death, the notification of the next of kin is the most agonizing responsibility. When a loved one passes away overseas, the logistics of that notification become complicated, but the urgency remains absolute. This brings us to the most glaring, horrifying anomaly in the entire Ashlee Jenae case, the 11-hour gap in communication. According to the timeline pieced together by Ashlee's devastated family, a staggering 11 hours passed between the time of the incident and the moment Joe McCann finally picked up the phone to call her mother in the United States. Let that sink in. 11 hours if you are on a foreign vacation and your newly engaged fiancé suffers a catastrophic medical emergency or is found unresponsive under deeply traumatic circumstances. Human instinct dictates immediate panic and immediate outreach. You call for help and you call their parents. You do not wait half a day. When Joe McCann finally did make contact with Ashlee's mother, Yolanda, the contents of that phone call were chillingly vague and allegedly deceptive. According to the family's public statements, Joe did not say that Ashlee had passed away. He did not provide a clear, coherent timeline of the morning. Instead, he allegedly told her mother that Ashlee did something to herself and claimed that she was currently stable. To a mother thousands of miles away, the word stable means hope. It means her daughter is alive, receiving medical care, and fighting to survive. It prompts a frantic rush to book flights, coordinate with embassies, and prepare for a medical evacuation. It is a word that provides temporary, desperate relief, but it was a false hope. The agonizing reality is that by the time that phone call was made, Ashlee Jenae was likely already gone, or in an irreversible, catastrophic medical state. The truth did not come from the man who had just promised to marry her. The ultimate, devastating truth came from the hotel, sometime after Joe's ambiguous phone call. Ashlee's family received a second official notification, allegedly facilitated by the hotel or local authorities. This call did not speak of stability. This call delivered the final, crushing blow. Ashlee had passed away. Why did Joe McCann wait 11 hours to make that first call? Was he detained by police and unable to access his phone? Was he in a state of profound psychological shock? Or was that 11-hour window utilized to coordinate a narrative, consult with legal counsel, and put distance between himself and the reality of Room 25? And why, when he finally spoke to a terrified mother, did he allegedly use the word stable when the situation was already a fatal tragedy? These are not just questions fueled by internet speculation. These are the exact timeline discrepancies that force criminal profilers and investigators to look at a grieving fiancé and see a massive, blinking red light. The delay in communication did not just cause unnecessary psychological torture for the family. It fundamentally fractured any trust they could possibly have in Joe McCann's version of events. As the family absorbed the shock of the delayed notification, their grief quickly mutated into a fierce, unrelenting demand for the truth. They absolutely refused to accept the initial Zanzibar police narrative of suicide. Ashlee was an ambitious, forward-looking woman who had just celebrated her birthday and an engagement. She was planning her future, not her end. Their refusal to blindly accept the official story was soon validated by leaked medical information that completely blew the case wide open. While local authorities were pushing the suicide narrative, Ashlee was transported to a local hospital and eventually to a second medical facility. It is from these medical evaluations that a drastically different, deeply disturbing picture began to emerge. Reports and alleged medical documents began circulating, citing the cause of death not simply as hanging, but pointing to cerebral hypoxia by strangulation and suffocation. In forensic pathology, the distinction between a self-inflicted hanging and manual strangulation or suffocation is written on the body. A self-inflicted hanging leaves a very specific type of ligature mark, usually an inverted V shape that pulls upward toward the knot. It rarely involves the fracturing of specific structures in the neck, depending on the drop. Manual strangulation, however, leaves entirely different evidence. It leaves horizontal bruising, internal hemorrhaging, and often defensive wounds as the victim desperately tries to pry the attacker's hands away from their throat. Suffocation implies the obstruction of the airway, perhaps by a pillow or an object, which leaves its own distinct microscopic petechial hemorrhaging in the eyes and face. Crucially, the medical reports also allegedly noted an unidentified mark on Ashlee's body. In the context of the reported arguments and the hotel's intervention just hours prior, an unidentified mark is the hallmark of a physical struggle. If these medical reports hold true against independent autopsy results, the narrative of a quiet, isolated suicide instantly disintegrates. It transforms the scene in the luxury villa from a tragic personal decision into a violent, physical fight for survival. The family, armed with these terrifying contradictions, is currently navigating the nightmare of international bureaucracy. They have secured an independent investigator through the United States Embassy. They have demanded a full, independent autopsy to bypass the local authorities they no longer trust. And they are demanding the release of any and all closed-circuit television footage from the Zanzibar resort to prove exactly who walked the pathways to Ashlee's villa on the night she died. The 11-hour gap in communication, the bizarre separation of the couple, the leaked medical terms of strangulation and suffocation, and the alleged request for a phone charger. These are not the puzzle pieces of a straightforward suicide. They are the fragmented, terrifying clues of a locked room mystery that ended the life of a bright, beautiful woman. As the independent investigations continue and the pressure from the international community mounts, the truth about what really happened in room 25 is slowly being dragged into the light. The fairy tale is over, but the fight for justice for Ashlee Jenae has only just begun.